Well, that's
Okay, we are gonna get started. I was raised by military parents at 12 o'clock. It's like I get a little anxious at 12, it starts 12. So first of all, welcome to all of you who took time out of your day to come join this webinar on supportive housing. This is a, come on in, welcome. Yeah. This is a collaborative effort for the past almost year. A few organizations in West Michigan, including DAC, Dave is back there with his phone, Oasis, Community Link Up, Disability Network Lakeshore, and some other partners, Genesis and Gracious Grounds have joined in with us today. But we've been meeting over the last almost year to talk about disability inclusive housing, which is an enormous topic. And this is one area that we wanted to focus on, supportive housing. The previous two were really focused around physical accessibility and design. And this one is different. It's an accessibility issue, and we'll talk about that, why we see it as an accessibility issue. But it's a different kind of accessibility issue to live independently with supports. So really quickly, some quick introductions. Dave just stood up. Dave, can you wave your hand? There's Dave. If you don't already know Dave, he's the executive director at Disability Advocates of Kent County. We have Steve Johnson here, who's the executive director at Oasis Community, which is Kent and Ottawa County, correct?
wherever there's a need.
Wherever there's a need. Come on in, welcome. We have Liz Nineheis, the executive director at Gracious Grounds, and we have Catherine Besaw from Genesis Housing joining here on our panel. And again, I'm Amanda Rhines Pullman, the executive director here at Disability Network Lakeshore. So we do really hope that this will be interactive, that we learn as much from you as we have to share. So please raise your hand. We'll check in on Zoom periodically as well. Chime in, ask questions. We only have 1 hour, so we're not going to solve the supportive housing crisis. But what we really were hoping to do was to get sort of establish a baseline, understand where challenges are, where are the bright spots, what do we need to continue to advocate for collectively? Welcome, come on in, and those kind of things. So this will not be an exhaustive list of all options in the community. This is just a sampling and a place for us to hopefully move forward from. So before we begin, if you have a cell phone, we know you came here with some questions, or a question that you wanted to have answered, or something along those lines. If you could use this QR code, there'll be a slide and you can type in question or questions you came with. If you would rather type in menti.com, you can enter this code 458090001, and it will take you just to one slide that says, what questions did you come here with? So you can answer that at your leisure. All right. Sorry, is it some? Oh, sorry. I know that poll is a little awkwardly placed.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so here's our traditional definition of supportive housing, right? This strategy that combines permanence and affordability with intensive services so people can live independently. We're going to look at this a little bit differently today. We're going to look at it and define it more broadly in some senses, as more of a spectrum of independent living options for people that have some commonalities. But we're also going to look at it more narrowly than is often talked about. The world of supportive housing is huge, and it includes substance abuse disorder, mental health, the aging and elderly populations. This particular conversation today is really focused on supportive housing for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, people who need supportive services to live independently. Come on in, you're welcome to come on in. So we know that the spectrum of options is going to come with a variety of funding payments and sources. They're going to range in intensity and scope of the services provided. But what's fundamental to all of them is that there's choice and there's community inclusion with appropriate supports. How are we doing on establishing sort of a baseline? Any questions? All right. So here again, some essential characteristics. We're going to highlight two options in our community that are different from each other, but what you'll see is that they have these common characteristics. They are permanent and they are affordable. Now, affordable is a tricky term, right? They are meant to be more affordable or affordable for people. And depending on the kind of supportive housing will dictate a lot of that funding support. And we'll talk a little bit about that as well. These are also places that afford their tenants the same rights and responsibilities as any other tenants. They have a lease. They have the right to privacy. They have the ability to set it up and decorate it. They can't essentially be evicted for anything other than being a bad tenant. You know, the same things you and I would be evicted for. They provide integration and inclusion. So again, on a spectrum, they have access to public transportation, to parks, to neighborhoods. They have neighbors with and without disabilities. It's important. We're not talking about reestablishing, institutional living, somewhere else with a park next door, because they have access to neighbors without disabilities in their community. Services provided are done in their home or their place of choosing. Maybe they want supports at work. Maybe they would like services at home or at a place, service providers. There's choice. We talked a lot about that. They have control over their daily lives. They can set visitors. Here's a really good example. A non-supportive housing setting would maybe say visitors have to be done and gone by 10 o'clock. And we eat meals at 6 o'clock, dinners at 6 o'clock. And here's what we're having, right? So that's a difference where we're focused in this area of supported housing where people have some choice. And the tenants and residents direct the type of services that they set. They set the goals for their lives and find the supports for them. They're accessible. And we talk about this a lot. They have to be physically accessible, right? We have plenty of folks who have disabilities, who have intellectual and developmental disabilities, who also have mobility disabilities. So we're talking about physically accessible buildings, but we're specifically focused today on the supports that make independence accessible. And so I like to say supports are the ramps. It's the same thing. If you can't get in the house, that's not an accessible house. Your ramp to get into that house for a lot of folks with intellectual and developmental disabilities are supports, appropriate supports so that they can live independently. So it is absolutely, from our perspective, an accessibility issue. Any thoughts or questions on that? I should check in on Zoom. Hang on. Yeah,
recording?
I am recording. I hit record a long time ago.
Good.
Like 10 minutes before. 10 minutes before. Okay, I don't see any questions on Zoom. If you do have questions in Zoom, go ahead and type them in the chat and we will come back if you have any there. Any other questions before we go on? Okay. So, as I said, we have two organizations here that we've talked about, that large umbrella of supportive housing that represent sort of two different models of supportive housing. The other person we have here is Steve Johnson, who we introduced early on from Oasis Community. Oasis and DNL, we don't do what those guys do. We aren't providing the housing. We're working with people and families to help build skills and make independence achievable for folks, but we don't provide that housing. So we're here hosting this and answering some questions on things that we think are important, but we're not the housing provider. So we thought it was really important to make sure that we have Gracious Grounds here and Genesis Nonprofit to kind of talk about their programs and put this into a little bit more perspective for what's available here. Again, this is definitely not an exhaustive list, and we'd love to hear from folks in the community who have more to share with us. Oh, shoot. Oh, good, you're not seeing that. Good. Okay. So I hate when I can see people's emails in a presentation. So. All right. So we're gonna kick this over to Catherine Bisa from Genesis. If you want to come on up, and she is going to share a little bit specifically about what they do, and I will get out of your way here. And just remember, you can click here, or you can, because it's a touch screen too, you can also just click the arrow and it'll go to your next one.
I guess I can make this. Hi, I'm Catherine Bisa from Genesis Nonprofit Housing Corporation. I am one of the resident supports coordinators. I've been with Genesis for 10 years now. Genesis is permanent supportive housing, affordable permanent supportive housing. And we have 6 locations across Kent County right now. The mission of Genesis is to assist persons with disabilities and those with age-related challenges to maximize their potential through the comprehensive provision of quality housing and support services. So you may recognize from that statement that we don't just serve intellectual and developmental disabilities. Our properties are, the smallest one is 23 apartments and the largest is 55. And it's our residents have mixed disabilities. It could be developmental, obviously, mental illness, physical disabilities, substance use disorders, all of those things. So they're going to have neighbors that do have other issues, but they're all set up in the community. And we encourage community involvement. I'm having trouble. We encourage community involvement with local organizations. My role as, I'm getting off track. So they're affordable. Each apartment comes with a site-based voucher, which limits the rent that our residents pay to about 30% of their income. The caveat with a voucher is, as far as overnight guests are concerned, MISTA only allows 14 overnights per year. So unless they're authorized to have a caregiver staying with them, they only can have company 14 overnights. They can have company every day. It's just the overnights that MISTA limits. We meet with residents when they move in and periodically while they're there. Support services are voluntary, but we do meet with everybody when they move in and get to know them and, you know, listen to what their goals are and what kinds of resources they need to be connected to and services they need to get established so that they can be successful in permanent housing or individual housing, independent housing. We highlight, you know, their strengths and utilize the, we just try to work with their strengths-based, you know, goals and connections to, a lot of our people do volunteer work and some work outside the work, have a regular job. And many of them are connected to faith-based organizations or AA or NA, all kinds of different community organizations. Does anybody have any questions? I feel like I was all over the board a little bit.
You mentioned like the caregivers, so do you have individuals who, you know, like, we have, full-time caregivers?
Can you say that a little louder for our Zoom folks?
I asked if there are full-time caregivers for individuals who are residents, so if there's somebody who has significant, developmental disability that needs full-time assistance, do you have people that live in your?
There are people that have live-in caregivers. Yes. Now, they're not Genesis employees. They're through another organization, but yes. Anything else?
I think that was my question, was the support services are provided, if someone chooses support services, they're provided by someone other than Genesis.
So the support, I go to work every day to one of the sites, and my title is Resident Support Services Coordinator. We act as a housing focused case management, basically. So yes, the day-to-day living supports, the community living supports would be provided through another agency, and we may help establish that or coordinate that with them.
So if they want to change support providers, they can still live there.
Oh, sure, yes.
Good question.
Yeah.
If a resident has a significant other, how does that navigate when it comes to housing, especially with that voucher limitation?
That they want to live together.
Either they want to live together or they have frequent visits, and they would like to have overnight visits.
Well, if you want them there more than 14 nights a year, probably best to live there because then they can be put on the lease. And or if they are a live-in caregiver, then they could be in the apartment. But the voucher is what makes it that limitation for 14 nights.
And I could be wrong, but I think that has a lot to do with protecting, so. I'm not gonna speak on that. I'll take it back. I don't. I shouldn't talk about something that I only kind of know. So, we can look at some really good question, and I think we should explore that a little bit further and add it to our list. So, thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
What if two people have a voucher? And they share an apartment, or do they have to have their own apartment? But this is a reference to what she was just saying.
Oh, good question. Yeah, they would only need one voucher for one apartment.
Sorry, one voucher per apartment.
Right. So if they have a traveling voucher and they move on to a Genesis site, they're gonna use the site-based voucher, and that traveling voucher would go back to Mishta to give to somebody else, for instance. So if two people have, one of them would go back and be distributed to somebody else.
So you don't have married couples.
Oh, sure we do,
Oh, okay.
but they just have one voucher. It's just one voucher per
One
household.
per family, basically.
Yeah,
So in my day, it was a section 8 voucher, it was the traveling voucher, and section 7 was kind of attached to the facility. You have both or just the traveling voucher?
we just have site-based vouchers for the Genesis
Rick.
properties.
So my job is working closely with Mishta.
Yeah.
So it's now section 8 is now housing choice voucher.
That's what I said, didn't I?
In section 8 in Kent County,
Okay,
the classic where it's only once in a great blue moon, everybody has to sign up.
yeah.
That's still alive, but the housing choice voucher for like Ottawa County, Allegan County
Yes.
is probably more used. You can transfer it wherever.
Gotcha.
Project-based vouchers stays with the facility. So they're probably project-based vouchers, maybe. If they decide to move, they can't bring their voucher with them. It stays with.
Now, every once in a while, they do open it up and let residents, after they've been there a year, to, if they want to move, to apply to move their voucher. But that's not a given anymore. It used to be pretty regular once they were there a year, but now it's only offered part of the time.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you have to live in Kent County to apply? You have to reside in Kent County before you can get to one of the homes? No.
Do all sites have a voucher?
Yes.
100% of your units.
Yes, some are different, some are tax credit.
Yeah.
So they're different percentages.
The support services, would they offer support with maybe not
managing beds, but helping people set up their beds, or is that something that you're gonna do outside?
They would need to have somebody coming in to do that. That would require a nurse probably, so, yeah.
Okay, questions?
Yeah. Criminal justice, restrictions.
They're the same as what Mishta's are. Mishta or Grand Rapids Housing, we do have one property that has vouchers through Grand Rapids Housing Commission, so, but the criminal background elements are the same.
How would someone qualify for this housing, and then what does the wait list look like to actually start the application to getting in more of a unit?
Good question. Each property is different with regard to the wait list. The shortest one for a single bed, for a one-bedroom apartment is our Kentwood property, and it's a 2-year wait. Most of them are 5 to 7 years at this point. Low income, the requirements are that you're low income and have a disability. That's it. My suggestion is always get on as many wait lists as any property that you're interested in, go ahead and apply. Because if it comes up and you're already housed or you're not, you decide, no, you don't want that one, you can always say no and wait for the next one.
If the owners, would that bump them up on the list at all?
Yes. And that's dependent though, that happens through Mishta. Makes sense? Okay.
So the term supported housing in this condition, this, is, it's supported by a Section 8 voucher, that's secured by supportive, it's not in a supportive environment in terms of we have outside agencies that.
well,
support.
No, we have supports on site during the day, a social worker.
Okay.
And the voucher piece is through, yeah, the financial
What
support.
kind of supports does the,
So it's housing targeted case management services.
okay,
So we may assist them with linking to resources like CLS providers, senior neighbors, Hope Network, Network 180, all of those things. We also have on-site events and speakers that come in. We do craft groups sometimes, just different activities that the residents want to have. So we would help facilitate those things. We've had MSU Extension come in and do some cooking classes. Things like that. So it varies by property based on what the tenants are telling us they want.
Great, well, thank you for presenting. She's not done, she's gonna be available for questions and we have some more things, but we'll move on and have Liz talk a little bit about Gracious Grounds. So you wanna head up? We're gonna just don't worry about that slide. That's the next slide, just ignore it.
Okay. All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Liz Nienhuis. I'm with Gracious Grounds. Gracious Grounds is a nonprofit housing community that supports successful independent living for adults with developmental disabilities. So we have 3 different locations. They're all in Grand Haven. We have a house and then we have 2 apartment complexes. We're able to have 50 residents live between our 3 properties. We have 3 staff members that help with during the day activities or resource coordination. And then we have resident assistants that live on property. So we have 6 resident assistants that stay overnight at our different properties. And our goal is to just encourage each resident to live their best life. We connect them to community resources, employment, volunteering. Over 90% of our residents have employment or an ongoing volunteer opportunity. And they're just very busy people. So, yeah. that's
How are you, well, one,
Mhm.
you wanna talk about your new
Sure.
exciting thing?
Okay.
Okay.
So on Thursday, we found out that we received MISHDA funding, which is really exciting. It was $15 million for a 77 unit apartment complex. So we're pumped. And that's going to break ground in March. So one of our board members has a lot of experience with developers and building. And so they partnered with us to apply for MISHDA. And we've just been working these past 6 months, getting the property ready, working with architects, and we found out that we have the green light, so we're going to be moving forward with building. So we're very excited. Right now we have the capacity for 50 residents, but we get probably 3 to 4 inquiries a week asking for housing and if we have availability. And most people are looking for 1-bedroom apartments. And we have a pretty long wait list for those 1 bedrooms. Sometimes we get people interested in 2 bedrooms, which is a roommate scenario. And we currently do have 1 opening for that right now that we're just opened up that we're looking to roommate match. So definitely a lot of need for that 1 bedroom. And so our new building will be all 1 bedrooms to meet that need.
So can you explain how currently, rent happens and how you work to maintain low rent? Because it is very different than a Section 8 or choice voucher. Right now it's private pay, correct?
Yep. So we're a private pay model. So how it works is the apartment complexes that we have, we do not own, we master lease them. And so the landlords, one of our places, they gave us an 18% discount. He's just been a long-term partner of us. So we've been able to pass that discount along to our residents, which is great. And the other is a 7-year lease and with no rent increases. So that's been helpful because, just to keep rent as low as we can. So residents private pay and then we pay the landlords. We don't charge any additional fees over what we pay to the landlords, which is great, but not necessarily the best for a sustainable organization. So that's why MISHDA funding and being able to own a building will be really nice for us moving forward.
Will the
So-
pay model stay the same or will there be
So
different options for affordability?
yeah, there'll be different options. So 8 of the units are for residents who are at 30% area median income. Another 8 are for 40%, another 8 are for 50%, and the rest are for 60% area median income or below. So there'll be kind of like a range of rents. So, yeah.
Where's your site located?
It's in Grand Haven, off of Robbins Road, is where it's like adjacent to Lakeshore Flats, if you're familiar with that apartment complex. It's actually on a private drive called Ability Way, which is cool. And so we just got a 4-acre parcel on that.
So for people that are interested in the new apartment,
Mm-hmm.
it's the same kind of process to get on that wait list, just to call and express interest.
Yep.
What are the requirements?
It's just, so usually families apply if they feel their loved one or if you as an individual are interested in applying. If you can live independently, our only requirements is you have to have an intellectual disability and are able to live independently. So most of our residents have a support team either through a CLS workers or other supports coming in, or some are fully independent as well.
So can they live there with, full-time caregiver or they have to?
We don't have anyone who has a live-in full-time caregiver right now. We have resident assistants that live on the properties, but they don't live like in the unit with the person. Yeah.
Would that be like, how does that?
It's not something we've actually explored because, but it's something we consider. MISHDA is new for me. We just found out Thursday. So we'll have to learn like what the rules and requirements are around that too. So.
So your current pay base right now, what are you charging for a 1-bedroom?
For a 1-bedroom, it depends. So our rent is anywhere from $800 to $1,000, depending on whether or not you have a roommate and which apartment or unit you're in. Yep.
I'm familiar with your one
Oh yeah.
development where my friend Tyler lives.
Yeah.
Cause like that, you have one building.
Yes.
There's what, 6 or 7 on that?
Yep.
Development
And this building will be adjacent to that. So,
adjacent to it, so
yeah.
it'll be kind of connected, it won't be 77 units isolated.
Right, it'll be adjacent. Yeah, we wanted to make sure it's walkable to all the different amenities and still a part of that building. And that entire area is master planned for high density residential. So, and there's buildings being built all around there. Hopefully more of them will be ours. But yeah, yeah.
Cool.
So the 77 is an addition to the 50 that you have?
So, yeah.
The 50 that you have now, are they all people with IDD that live there, or are there people that don't have disabilities that live there too?
So there is a house, and then that's part of a residential community. We have an apartment complex that's part of other apartment complexes in the area. And then we have one building at Lakeshore Flats that's part of Lakeshore Flats community. So, yeah, so they're kind of scattered throughout the Grand Haven community.
Okay,
The
but
buildings
Yeah.
themselves.
And the buildings themselves, right, so it's just our residents and then resident assistants who have their own apartments. Resident assistants live overnight and provide services as needed.
But everyone in that building has a developmental disability?
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
And then how about the 77? Are they, all of those people gonna have developmental disabilities, or are they gonna?
Yeah, so it'll be a similar model to our current Lakeshore Flats model. Yep.
Within broader community,
Mhm.
apartment.
Right.
structures.
Yeah, and one of our goals
Neighbors.
is community integration. So our resource coordinator like works with each resident to make sure they're engaging in the community and connect them to whatever it is they want to be doing out in the community.
So how is the price for the units? Because I know that affordability was a big concern.
Yeah.
How is that considered?
When we're setting the rent.
Yes, like what is the metric that you're looking at to say something is affordable?
We've just been working to see how we can get the price as low as we can get it. So right now it's had to be with negotiations with the current landlords. And then with Misha, it was just as low as we could for the budget. So yeah, we definitely, what we're worried about with our current properties is eventually the rents will be going up and they'll price us out and we won't be able to provide housing that's even, that's not cool. So we're trying to keep it as low as possible. So.
And do you require that your residents receive SSI or SSDI?
No.
How long have you been around?
On this earth, or I'm 37 now. So Gracious Grounds has been around for 10 years. We opened our first house in 2016, and then our additional apartment complexes. Our latest one was opened the summer of 2020, which is a great time to open housing.
And how did you approach these?
So one has been a board member and was a partner a long time ago. I'm not sure what the other one was. I've only been with the organization for a year, but it was just through partnerships in the community. So, but one of our landlords has been a long-term supporter of ours. So, yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
One of the newer buildings that you put up, that is a, was it one building was designated for those with disabilities, correct, and the other buildings were community, open to community?
You mean like at our Lakeshore Flats?
I'm not sure which one.
Okay, so our newest one, the Lakeshore Flats one, it's owned by, the landlord. They have, I think, 7 buildings, and we master lease one of those buildings within that Lakeshore Flats apartment community.
Yeah, and he's the one that sets the rent for that particular building.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Any other questions on this? All right, well, keep going. Thank you, Liz. All right, so just a quick tour through 2 options in the West Michigan area. We know there's more. We want to learn more about all of these and connect everyone to them. But we also thought we'd take a minute and just stop again and say why. Why not, just put everybody in an institute? I mean, hopefully we've gone past that, but really, why do we want to do this, and why do we need more of this? Well, one, people prefer it. if given the choice, and there's research around this, and I cited one of them down here. I'll send you the slides. And when given a choice, people with developmental and intellectual disabilities prefer to live independently. So if they're not given a choice, yeah, mom's is great. But if I'm given an option between living with my mom and living in my own apartment, almost everybody wants to live independently. So that's really what should be driving us. There's that study is really interesting. It also indicates that people with the most support needs benefit the most from community inclusive housing. So their quality of life, they went and talked about quality of life metrics. And for people with the most significant support needs, their quality of life dramatically outperformed even people with moderate to mild support needs. So it's even more important for our people with significant support needs. There's economic benefits. So when people are appropriately and permanently housed, they interact less with those expensive systems like the emergency room and the police department and the criminal justice system. So it's just cheaper on the whole. And also a lot of people who live independently, suddenly they can work, they can get out, they can do things that maybe without living independently people thought what was impossible for them. So now they're working, right? And they're contributing to the tax base, and they're, making money. Now they can go live at Gracious Grounds, so there is economic benefit here. And this is just snapshots. There's a lot more here. We're just trying to give you some. And then Steve, if you wouldn't mind talking a little bit about the importance of this around aging caregiver population. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure.
Your experience with your families? I'm going to turn the camera for our Zoom folks so they can see you. Oh, look, hold on. You can come up here. Yeah, why not? Why not? Come up here and talk about aging caregiver population.
I am the aging caregiver population.
And I'm approaching.
Thanks for coming, for one thing. Oasis started because a bunch of parents got together. I kind of instigated that with two co-conspirators about 12, 14 years ago, just to talk about how we can survive, how we can make life better for our kids, etc. And we realized that there's one bridge everybody has to cross, and that is someday they're going to move out because they want to and can, or we're going to die, and the second one is a guarantee. So we look at this and say, we probably have to start talking about housing. We never had a desire to own property, but if somebody wants to give us a building, we'll graciously accept it. Our idea was to prepare people to have the skills to live independently, to have some supports, and help them acclimate themselves to the community socially through a community builder, which is like a resident, an RA, okay, same kind of concept. And so we've been doing this for quite a few years. We're still small, we're still trying to grow. One thing is, we looked at it, we did not want to exclude anyone. Everybody has to pick some kind of a lane. Donna Bunce always says that, pick your lane. We picked the highway with about 12 lanes on it because we feel that anybody with a disability, no matter how severe, if they are adequately supported, they can live in the community. Now, adequately supported is that word. It's a lot of different meanings to it. My son is a quadriplegic. He obviously requires more supports than somebody else. So in some of our people that are living in what we have partnerships with ICCF, we work with Genesis and Dwelling Place, and Hope Network has a new one coming on. They're remodeling something, and it's going to be like 200 units, and we're going to look for like 7 or 8 in there that intersperse them among the population. But it's everybody has it's not supportive housing, and that we don't have someone that works for us that helps them get acclimated. They bring their own supports, and so you can obviously see there's a huge need. Several years ago, one of my co-founders and I were talking to a group of students, disabled students, at a at a high school. And obviously they were higher functioning because they weren't like at Ottawa Area Center or some other place. And we asked them, how many are you ready to leave? And like every room, every hand in the room shot up. They're ready. They're prepared. Different venue, different parents, not the same ones, but gets the point across. We asked the parents, how many of you have a child that's ready to move out? Oh, not yet. No, we have a lot of things, you know, there's a lot of, so sometimes the greatest ally of these kids, adult children, are the parents, and sometimes the biggest obstacle is the parents. So in our education, we try to separate, you know, the kids are learning over here and through DAC also, you got your young adult services, we think it's great. And then we're training the parents on what has to be done and try to back off as much as possible and let your child do it. One thing that Amanda had said about the populations, we find out that kids totally surprise their parents with what they can do when they're allowed to do it and they're outside. And those with the greatest amount of disability seem to shine the greatest because now they have an opportunity. Things we take for granted, they've been looking forward to all their lives. And when they get that chance, they do it. They do very, very well. So we try to provide the education because getting back to the age thing, I know it's hard to believe this, but I'm almost 72. My son is 35. I'm the poster child. You know, we have over in Michigan, and my disability is ADHD. I had a whole piece of paper with all the talking points on it, and I left it home. So I'm going by what I remember, okay? And I'm not making these statistics up. I think I'm within 1 or 2 percentage points, something like 75% of all the people living at home with an intellectual or developmental disability are living with a parent caregiver over the age of 65. Now, if you draw that graph, it's not sustainable. By the time they're 60, I'll have been dead for 40 years. Okay. So what do? And frankly, the other thing that intersects with this is we have some people living independently that have like 7 or 8 hours of CLS a week. Okay. And it works out okay. And if they don't have somebody, it's easy to fill that 7 hours in. My son will probably need, I don't know, Beth, what do we say? 60, 70 hours a week, not overnight all the time with appropriate you know, technology. You know, he functions pretty well, but he communicates terribly because he's got cerebral palsy and autism. Autism is the big problem, not the cerebral palsy, but he is a wheelchair user, which makes it more challenging. He needs a lot of help. Does anybody looking around for a job to be a CLS worker? You are?
Seriously, I'm certified as well.
Oh, let's talk after this, okay? Because
Yeah.
I know a family in Kent County. They're retired pharmacists. Okay, they immigrated to this country many years ago. They have 2 daughters in motorized wheelchairs that are nonverbal, high needs. They had the wherewithal to build a house for the girls where they could live. They're not living there. They're living with mom and dad because they can't find the staff. They've tried everything. They cannot get the staff.
And we'll get to those challenges here on the
Yeah.
next slide. Yeah.
I mean, for some of us, that's existential. The rest of this is kind of, I don't care how much the housing costs because we can't live there anyway, right? So that's a challenge. And it's just something which has to be met somehow.
Yep.
And I don't see any answers yet, unfortunately.
Well, that's what we're here to get started, right?
Any questions about Oasis?
What's your vision for Oasis? Or what's Oasis's vision for Oasis?
That everybody with a disability lives in the community and they're involved and connected. And they can do anything with appropriate supports that anybody else could do. It's just respect for humans. Yeah.
I'm hearing a lot about people that currently have support from parents transitioning into independent housing. What is being done for those who might be currently experiencing houselessness, especially when we look at, specifically, I advocate for queer communities.
Mhm.
So we see that those who identify as trans are twice as likely to have intellectual disabilities such as autism. How do you navigate those barriers, especially when we have this housing crisis?
We have not had the opportunity yet to do that, but I'm looking forward to it. I really am. We believe we believe every human being has those rights. It makes no difference whether you're trans or gay, or it makes no difference. My son is gay, okay? So not my disabled son, his younger brother, who happens to be his supports broker, which is another great term, something that's very, very valuable. But yeah, we believe everybody, even if they're not getting Medicaid, we would try to find somewhere, Social Security, disability, we'd find some way to do it. And our vision includes the word disability without intellectual or developmental. So we do have one new person who moved here from out of state. She just moved in, and she does not have any intellectual disability whatsoever, but she's got spinal bifida. So we try to make that as broad as possible, which makes it almost impossible. It makes it harder, but it's worth it.
Okay, we're gonna keep on moving. We'll hear more from Steve as we go through. Thank you, Steve. Oops, sorry about that. All right. And my battery's running low, but I thought I was plugged in, so I'm not sure how that's working. Okay, we're gonna go really quick. Hang on 2 seconds here.
Oh,
Let's
that
see.
must be it.
There we go. All right. Okay, and the last bullet point here, we've talked a lot about is the importance for everyone to feel connected. It feels like an afterthought at this point, even though that's really the basis of what we're doing. We want people to be connected into their community because their quality of life matters. And we know that when you live independently, your quality of life improves. In the interest of time, since we've got about 13 minutes left, I want to kind of move us along. So challenges, we've identified a lot of them. Affordability, right? So the average Social Security SSI payment right now is, I believe, is $914 a month. And I checked the a recent monthly average in Ottawa County for an efficiency, not even a 1-bedroom, an efficiency is $904, leaving you a whopping $10 a month to live on. if that's what all you have is income, right? So that's a huge deal, this affordability issue. So we've got a lot of work to do around that. Rental assistance is often the resource that is most frequently used to ensure that housing is affordable. As we talked about, those Section 8 choice vouchers, you don't just get them. There are significant waiting periods. So that is a challenge. We have a shortage of available units. I mean, Liz announced that there were 70 units, and I could tell the people who work with people, they were like, what's her name? How do I get on that list? It is absolutely a problem right now. We have these complicated systems. Again, as we were talking about the choice voucher and what's it called and how do you get on it, right? The community is lacking preparation. It's not just the people who need to build the skills. The community needs to be prepared for this influx of parental caregivers who are going to die. I'm one as well. And where are kids going to go? Right? We have to be working on this. Now, we should have been working on this 50 years ago, 100 years ago, but we're not. We're working on it now. And that's what Dave tells me. We're working on it now. So these systems are complicated. There is shortages. There's lack of transportation. And here's the really, really big one that is on the, everybody's talking about it. Thank goodness. There's a lack of qualified direct care workers, right? The pay is terrible. The training is hit or miss, depends on where you get it and how you get it, but there's no real great the common curriculum or set standards, things of that nature. I know Impart Alliance is working on that. And there's no real great career path. So all of this kind of comes together to create, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here, this massive crisis in direct care. And what do we talk about? Supports are the ramps. We can't get the ramps because it's the support. The people are the support. So that's a huge one that we've got to work on. I think I mentioned transportation. And then Steve talked about this already, so I won't dwell on it here, but that sort of care we called it gently, care provider boundaries.
Mhm.
Because, you know, our first one was gonna be parents. So, and again, as one, I can relate, but that idea that, our families also need to be prepared and preparing, for this transition, as well as, the individuals with disabilities themselves, as they build life skills and the, ability to live independently. How are we supporting those families to help and not get in the way? And then the idea of aging in place. And Liz, I know that you brought this one up as we were putting it together. Did you want to just briefly talk about, like, I'll turn the camera to you.
Oh, just something that we've been talking a lot. Many Americans bring it up, of course, and I think we're looking to explore residents. Our residents are all ages, so
Mhm.
any adult can live there. And we have one in particular that we're starting to explore, like what supports can we get in place to ensure that they are properly taken care of.
Because those support needs change as people age.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Any questions on that? And again, I know I'm rushing now to get us through, but I want to pause and make sure. Okay. All right. So this is actually the more interactive part, right? So one of the things that I often talk about is, it's not mine. I don't even remember where I got it from, but finding the bright spots and leaning into those bright spots. This is an incredibly complex problem. It's going to take a plethora of varied solutions, but what's working? Because if we can identify areas where things are kind of working, we brought in a couple of examples here, then maybe we can start to identify how we collectively lean into those and advocate for more of that, right? So what are some of those innovative ideas out there that you guys have heard of? And what should we collectively be advocating for? Go ahead.
So I have had experience being a direct support professional as well as an employment training specialist. So working with people with cognitive disabilities as well as substance use disorders or mental health concerns. I find that there's a massive population of people that are looking for work that have great care in their hearts that would be perfect fits for direct support professional positions because they have lived experiences.
Mm-hmm.
So really elevating disabled people's ability to have employment, be able to work with people and offer peer support, people that get it, that I don't know if it's been discussed, disability porn. I've seen it be extremely efficient for both parties, both people be getting employment and both people now receiving that level of support they need without those barriers and boundaries being broken. And having someone that they trust because they understand that they have similar lived experiences.
Fantastic. That's awesome. What other things have you guys, I mean, I can speak as a parent. My son has Down syndrome and autism. And so I'm connected in with a group of parents that have kids with Down syndrome. And I think I was telling Dave earlier, I can tell you what the parents are talking about, right? These systems are so darn complicated that it's almost like, how do we band together? How do 5 of us figure out how to make this possible for our kids together, right? So does that solve the problem for everybody? No, but it's out there. That's an option. What are other things that you all have heard? I know you've talked about the Kelsey as a model in California.
California, yeah, they take the whole idea of this affordable housing. An important subset is disability, but they're going for solve the big problem.
Yeah.
Okay, and so, and the founders of that were 2 cousins. One of them passed away. Her name was Kelsey, and the other one basically says, you don't want to be in competition. Yes, the elderly need housing. There's people that are homeless and disabled, but they can make a great community together also with other people that are not disabled or homeless. But and they're building. And she said to me, "We're making affordable housing in San Francisco. I'm fairly certain you can do it in West Michigan."
And their model is through public-private partnerships.
They have corporations coming in deciding to do this, to do the right thing. And it's affordable housing forever because it's owned by like ICCF or Genesis, and they're not going to raise the rates.
other thoughts, other models, things you guys have heard about? Yeah, go ahead.
I'm Lauren, so I'm from Young Adult Services, and then Michelle from Ottawa Area Center, so we're trying to have this conversation a lot sooner.
Yeah,
Before
that transition.
Yeah. I'm leaving school, so if anyone wants to connect with us.
Well, we'd love to. And I know Dave would, but
Yeah. I was just saying, in the spirit of that, like, I think this is all great conversations, and I'm a parent as well.
Yeah.
But like a lot of our students at OAC, this type of housing, not so work for them, because they need that extra level of care.
Sure.
So I know Leah is sitting over here, not to put Leah on the spot, but we've had conversations with CMH. You know, because a lot of our students, they need. So that's how we model that work. Hoping it will.
Go ahead, Dave.
as well.
Yeah, I mean, in the note I wrote to myself for that question is what models? And the answer is all of the above.
All of them.
You know, because, yeah, I'll leave it there. But definitely, how do we continue to gather and ask those questions? When we start talking about, as Amanda said, we did just 3 lunch and learns this fall. There are additional topics, you know, and I can really smart off about how the legislative process works, but we might have a former legislator in the room.
It's
You can
possible.
really smart off about how the system works and doesn't work, and how do we come together to really advocate for those changes, because the system it's broken on a good day, and we all work in the system. I'm part of the system too. I'm not trying to blame anybody else, but how do we really fix that system and make those changes together? So let's keep coming together. I think we have your email, but if you want, we call it the OK Housing Crew for Ottawa Kent. So just come be part of us, with us, ask those questions, and then we'll see. And again, we do not guarantee success. We only guarantee failure. If we do nothing, we will fail. But we cannot guarantee success. So anyways, that's my quick pitch.
Thanks, Dave. And so, yeah, I mean, and that goes right into it, right? I love a little quote every once in a while. It always seems impossible until it's done. If we do nothing, it's impossible. Right. So this is 1 hour on a very massive topic with a ton of problems and complications. But the hope really is that some like-minded folks in terms of getting some solutions have come together. Where do we go from here? What do we want to do? How do we, come together collectively in small groups and in larger groups and continue this conversation? So again, we'll extend the invitation again to participate with us as we move forward. And we will definitely be reaching out. Are there any last minute thoughts or questions, because we're approaching 1 o'clock? Yes.
I have a question for Gracious Grounds.
Great.
So I'm a Howland resident, and we just had a community forum last spring with Dwelling Place and the local churches that were proposing building property for mixed use apartment complexes for residential income. My perception, it was not well received when we broke off into small groups. My group against the proposal. Because, and this is where I need help with the advocating. So these are people that live in the Holland where they're proposing to do this. One man was very, very upset that his flowers will not grow because the shadow of the building is going to wreck the sunlight. We tried to ignore him. We interrupted multiple times. The second one is, it was just shocking. They didn't know how to say this in a nice way. So if there's any way for me to help advocate, but they were like, we don't want those, right? People downtown, right? So if we have a group of people with disability that want to go shopping downtown, want to go to our beautiful park, want to go to the library, right? Like that's going to be the perception of Holland, because that's where you drive through. It's bad enough we have homeless people walking around on River Street, but we certainly don't want a whole building full of people, because that's what people's first impressions when they see our city. When you drive through, that's like, right? And I wasn't flabbergasted actually, quite honest, because
I
The
would say.
demographic of,
Mhm.
the demographics spoke for itself.
Yeah,
But at the same time, I'm like, how do we change like the community's
yeah,
perception? of-
prepare that community.
They
I would
prefer-
say thank you. I'm so glad. Look at our inclusive community. I would just put it right back out. That's education. We are an inclusive.
But-
Joe, go ahead. Yeah.
My first
The
impression,
taxpayers too,
just,
though.
because I can be kind of obstinate, my wife says, I think it's, you know, being focused, but she says, I think. Is it, what you do is put your pedal on, your foot, put your foot on the pedal and race into it and do it anyway, because you'll never change some people. The only way it changes, because they see them in the neighborhood, they become friends with them, they see they're human beings, and then it gets accepted. That's how it gets accepted, by being there. And we can't educate, we can help prepare something, but you can't really change the heart.
Perception.
But we need to, if they're gonna be the voters that vote in these public places, we need the buy-in from, you know, the demographic that I'm talking about. So, you know, just because it has to be voted by.
And I
the
think it's
city.
greater visibility.
And then I also, you know what I mean? I just kind of felt like there's a bigger picture of what our community stands for.
Mhm.
Are you talking about the one with Hope Church and?
Yes.
So they went ahead and applied for.
They did.
They did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see, right? So this is the journey and then how can we, so I'm thinking more locally, if we have people here from town. like-
Well, you got two things that work out. First of all, it's low income housing.
But it wasn't even, it was mixed use.
Okay,
Yeah.
but you're gonna have people with low incomes, some living there, and people with disabilities living there. Wow.
Yeah.
You had something you wanted to add?
Well, I would just remember the audience, there's a certain group of people that are gonna be against it.
Yes, yeah.
But there were people that were opposed to the mission when it went downtown.
Absolutely.
I can imagine.
And that has acclimated to downtown very well. And I'm old enough to remember when Warm Friend moved downtown. And the same thing was said of, what good are those seniors in the downtown? They're not gonna produce it. That's been a blessing to the house community too. So if it's new, it's gonna be criticized.
So community education.
Yeah.
Which, you know, frankly, that's come to us. That's absolutely what we want to be working on and should be working on is outreach and community education and really working to prepare the community. So we'd be happy to partner with you. I won't speak for Dave, but I would imagine something similar in the Kent County area.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Whatever it's worth, I came from a meeting concerning potential countywide village for housing. You know, so I mean, people know that housing is an absolute crisis in our community. Affordable housing, and as I like to say, affordable accessible housing is beyond a crisis. And then affordable, accessible, supported housing at all levels of support is way, way beyond the crisis because we choose not to support our family, friends, and neighbors, because that's who this is about.
Yeah.
If we talk about those people, we're doomed. Because I don't want to support those people, but I don't know those people. I have family, friends, and neighbors. And some of us also read gospels. I'll leave my criticism there about other people who read gospels and choose to other.
Yeah.
Well,
But we
basically,
digress.
this is the civil rights movement. And
It is a
the
matter of justice.
the largest minority in this country is disability.
Something I do have to ask,
Mhm.
is I often find that those people arguments come when the people that you're trying to advocate for or representing are in the room. It's much easier to be like, it's those
Yep.
people and not our neighbors, not our family,
Mhm.
not our
Yep.
friends. When they're not in the room. And so when we're talking about spaces like this, we're talking about accessible housing or an instance where you're on that event there. We need to look around and address what barriers kept the people that we're supposed to be serving out of this room. Why are their voices not able to speak up for themselves?
Absolutely.
Because when we come down to it, the best disability advocacy, the experts are gonna be people with disabilities.
Right.
And lived
And
experience.
the best thing to support them is to lift their voices.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
Well
Yes.
said.
Very well said. Well, thank you all. There is a brief, another little mentee, a brief survey, if you wouldn't mind filling it out. It's real quick. And you can skip any question, though none of them are required. But just to give us a little bit of feedback. And if you have time, there's cookies and coffee, just slide, yep. Cookies and coffee back in that room. And we'd love to have you stick around, connect with each other, connect with us. Any of the people on our panel. Thank you so much for coming today. Really appreciate you taking the time out of your day. Thanks. Bye-bye. Thank you, those on Zoom.